Welcome to the fifth of 6 webinars addressing the challenges we're all facing in finding the right people for the jobs that we have and that we need so desperately to fill our respective missions. My name is Joanna Truitt, Executive Director for the Association Education Alliance, of which your company is a member through your association membership. Displayed here are the associations participating in this series. Each is a member of the AEA, a consortium of distributor-focused trade associations. As you have questions and Alex is going through his presentation, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box and we will address them after his presentation is concluded. I am pleased to introduce our presenter for the series, Alex Chasovsky. Alex is Vice President at the Miller Associate Group. He is a highly experienced market researcher and analyst with more than 20 years of experience across subjects including economics, industrial manufacturing, automation, and advanced technology trends. For the past 2 decades, he has consulted and advised companies throughout the US and Canada, Europe, South America, and Asia. In his current role, he is responsible for overseeing a suite of analytic products focused on acquiring good talent. He is also consulting with companies to help them become better at attracting, hiring, and retaining the impact players in their industry. Alex, let me go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Joanna, and thanks to all of you, as usual, for joining us today. We've got a lot to cover, so I'm not going to beat around the bush. We're just going to get right into it. The goal of the presentation today is to put together the different elements that we've been hearing and I've been presenting over the last 4 episodes to talk about what a comprehensive talent strategy is, because a talent strategy is really what you need in order to win the war for talent that's going on. For example, I know that many people probably saw the fact that job openings in the United States fell by over 1 million positions in the last month of data, going from August to September. What doesn't get much coverage, but is just as important, is the fact that the number of people available to work also fell by almost 1 million people, from about 6.2 million to just over 5.5 million. So although the dynamics of the labor market are starting to loosen up a little bit, it remains very much, and in my opinion, will continue to remain, a candidate-driven market that you need to adapt different strategies and different techniques than what you have been doing in the past. So the first set of things that I really want you to think about in developing that talent strategy are more kind of conceptual. They really require a change of mindset on your part and a change of behavior. The first and foremost that I really recommend that you do as an organization is recognize that if people really are your greatest asset, you need not just the HR department to be focused on talent acquisition, hiring, and retention. It needs to be multi-departmental, and it certainly needs to involve the most senior members of every organization. You have to be able to allocate resources, which includes money. It includes certainly people's time and energy, and it includes commitment to developing and then continuously improving a strategy that will allow you to scale as the business grows and will certainly help you plan not just for the short term, but also for medium and long-term needs of the business from a talent perspective. I know that most organizations get together for strategy meetings in the fall, but most of the time they're talking about products and markets, and at least at the executive level, not enough attention is being paid to people and what the needs of the business are from that perspective. So I really want to stress this very much, that the highest levels of the organization need to be involved in that conversation. The second key theme is that everything you do around talent needs to be informed by data. It can't be a matter of, well, we've always done it this way, or it can be I have a gut feeling that we should be doing like this. You really need to go to sources of data that are reliable and consistent and independent of emotion and bias in order to make your decisions, whether it's in understanding the candidates that are coming through your door, in tracking various metrics related to hiring and retention, in looking at compensation data from a again, unbiased and impartial, emotionless state, but really looking at the numbers and letting that be the driver of all of your decision making. And then finally, I want to stress the need that you can't for partnerships and alliances. You really cannot win the war for talent by yourself. You have to broaden the ranks. You have to realize that there are other elements involved, and there is expertise out there outside of your own businesses that is going to help you achieve better outcomes and have a terrific ROI on whatever investment you do need to make in forming those alliances and partnerships. So these are the thematic points that I wanted to mention today, but there are also tactical elements, and those tactical elements can really be broken down into the three pillars of talent strategy, which is attracting, hiring, and retaining workers. So when it comes to attracting, there are two key tactical elements that I really want you to understand. And the number one element there is you've got to think about talent attraction as not just an HR function, but as a sales and marketing function within your organization. You have to change the way that you project the story of your business to the marketplace, and you have to do a better job at understanding who's sitting in front of you when you conduct interviews so that you can customize and tailor the message to be unique to that particular individual. Let me go into a little bit more detail on these things for an example for you. When it comes to selling the company, the old adage is, well, if you're in an elevator with a potential employer, you need to have a 10 or 30-second elevator speech that will convince them to hire you on. In this job market, it's the businesses that need to convince candidates that they should be the ones that they come to work for, because there's so much competition, so much opportunity for remote and other positions work out there, and that you really have to sell the idea of why somebody would want to work for you. And when you're doing so, you need to do 4 key elements of that sales pitch. Number one, you need to talk about why the market in which you operate is exciting and revolutionary, why it's changing, and why they want to build a career in that space. You also want to talk about the products and services that you serve that market with. Why would working for you allow them to achieve success independently, individually, and as part of a broader collective within your company? Number 3, who is on the team that they will be joining? This is something that gets underestimated quite a bit, but people want to be associated with winners. And so you've got to be able to sell that your team has achieved great strides and they've accomplished a lot. And that, these are the reasons why this particular individual might want to join your organization, to be a part of that team, because they're going to make them stronger, they're going to make them better, and they're going to be able to achieve success as a part of that organization. And lastly, what is it that your company does that goes beyond just making money, whether it's top line or bottom line? How do you serve society? How do you improve people's lives? Why is it that somebody can feel good about working for your company? If you can take these 4 elements and put them together in a concise message that you can deliver through your marketing channels or even through your sales techniques, that's going to go a long way in making you a more attractive employer to potential candidates. When you're speaking to those candidates, you have to understand that each person is motivated by very different things. At MRG, Miller Resource Group, we ask every candidate that we talk to fill out a CLAMPS profile. CLAMPS is simply an acronym that stands for challenge, location, advancement, money, people, and security. And we ask folks to simply rank which ones of these things do they find most important and least important in order from 1 to 6. And then we adapt the conversation to hit on the specific points that that particular person cares about. We tailor the discussion to focus on money, if that's their number 1 priority, or on the challenge of the job, if that's what they care about. Particularly engineers are in that category. Younger people really care about promotion and advancement opportunities and the folks that they're going to be joining, whereas mid to late career people talk about location, remote work capabilities, and job security. So put yourselves into the mindset of the candidate. If the company that you're interviewing with is talking to the things that you really care about, the likelihood that you're going to want to join that organization goes up substantially. So for attracting people, do those 2 things. Treat it as a sales and marketing function by building a cohesive and powerful message that you can take about why somebody would want to work for you. And then also understand the candidates and talk to the points that matter to them, so that way they feel really compelled to join the organization after the conversation is over. Shifting gears to the second pillar, hiring, you have to understand that there are basically two types of potential candidates out there. There are active candidates and passive. And you have to have both apply for positions that you have open in order to have the best outcome possible. You also have to be really focused on looking at efficiency within the hiring process and really, really effective regular communication. If those two things are absent, you're going to be missing out on top talent, the companies that do have this part figured out. And then you have to also realize that in a hyper-competitive marketplace with salaries having risen dramatically, there are other levers that you can pull besides just the monetary component. So let's take a look at all of these things in a little bit more detail. First, understand the difference between active and passive candidates. Active folks are basically those that are unemployed and proactively looking for jobs. They're sending out resumes into the great void of the internet, expecting to not ever hear back from over 90% of the submissions that they make. They take something called a shotgun approach to filling out applications. Now, you can't get away from talking to people like that, but you need to supplement your efforts in hiring with identifying, targeting, and engaging with passive candidates who are currently employed, but not happy, otherwise they wouldn't be looking. They might be casually browsing, scrolling through things like LinkedIn and Glassdoor and Indeed, but never actually taking the step to engage with those organizations or apply for those positions. Why? Well, because those people tend to need to have someone reach out to them and compel them to actually apply. That's where the partnerships come in. I highly recommend that you identify either an internal and hire him, or an external recruiter partner that's going to be able to engage passive candidates for you on your behalf and encourage them to apply to your open positions. When they do apply, keep in mind you don't want to stretch out that interview process very long. These are some of the results of a survey that I completed asking tens of thousands of candidates that we've spoken to over the last 5 years. And as you can see, when you ask people how many interviews should it take before a company expresses concrete interest in having you join the organization, over 83% said no more than 2 interviews. So if you are still conducting 4, 5, 6 interviews, first of all, ask yourself, how can we streamline? How can we take that number down? If they're talking to a bunch of different people, can we get all of those folks in one room to conduct a conversation? And secondly, realize that if you're not being efficient in this process, you're likely, again, missing out because there are organizations that have gotten this down to a science, and they're the ones winning the war for talent. Lastly, when it comes to the offer stage, when you actually made the decision to ask someone to join your organization, understand that salary is one, a very powerful, but only a single component of what you can offer someone. There are many other things that you can offer. In particular, right now, mental health benefits, PTO, flexible working arrangements are really resonating, particularly with the younger generations. And so even if your position is one that prevents you from being able to offer the top market wages, talk to the candidate and ask, what is it besides the money component that you really care about that we can perhaps bring to the table in enticing you and encouraging you to both take the job, and you can leverage this with people that you already have working for you and say, how can we help you get to where you want to be? And that will increase some retention metrics within your organization as well. Now, speaking of retention, I think the key elements that I wanted to share with you on this angle is you really have to strive to make an effort. You really have to put it out there that you want to understand where people are in their mental perception of your business and what you can do to improve that perception over time, or if it's already good, to maintain it. One of the key elements that we suggest, and I don't have anything to do with Gallup personally, but there is a great tool called the Gallup Q12 survey that costs about $20 a person to administer within your organization. And it really gives you some great perspective on where people stand in terms of their assessment of you as a company and if they're likely to leave the business in the near term or not. We'll talk a little bit about compensation challenges to add a little more flavor there. But I also want you to understand that despite the fact that we're heading into a likely economic slowdown and certainly very high possibility of a recession, depending on the industry that you're in, you're still going to have this challenge of finding labor. We're seeing this concept of labor hoarding really increase in recent months, where companies are saying, I'm going to hold on to the people that I have, even if things slow down quite dramatically, because I've just gone through this pain of hiring and onboarding them, and I don't want to lose them and have to repeat the process again. So as you look out to the future, even with a slowing economy, I think that the labor conditions are going to remain very tight, and you're going to want to hold on to the workers. So how you do that? The Q12 survey is a great place to start. Here are a few sample statements that the survey asks your employees to either agree or disagree with. Things like, I know what is expected of me at work, and my opinions seem to count, and I have the opportunity to do what I do best every single day. So you can see here, when you have large-scale agreement, then the potential for turnover within your organization is much smaller than if you're not getting those kinds of responses, or if you're not administering the survey in the first place. So again, minimal cost to administer, high output and high results. Highly recommend you look at this. From a compensation basis, what I wanted to highlight for you is the discrepancy that currently exists between different industries and vertical markets. I'm using the position of an HR manager here to make my point, because that is the #1 most searched for position in the entire job market right now. HR people are overwhelmed, companies need help in this area, and so everyone's trying to hire HR managers. But as you can see, depending on the industry that you're in, the compensation differs greatly. Food manufacturing, essentially, as in this example, pays just under 6 figures for an HR manager with a certain set of specific characteristics. The same kind of candidate, same education level, same years of experience, simply going into a different industry like finance and insurance, might be getting an offer up to 20 or even more % than that relative to what they might be getting in another sector. So you really have to start to be creative and cognizant of the competition that exists between industries. We see this across the board: salespeople, engineering talent, marketing, certainly blue-collar positions as well, constantly vying for supremacy between industry to industry. And so you've got to be competitive not only within your sector, but also in the broader market as a whole. Now, we can help. So if you have questions, particularly regarding compensation, what you should be paying in terms of positions that you're trying to hire for right now, and who within your organization is likely to be at a risk of departure because they're being undercompensated, that's certainly something that I can engage you with on an individual basis. So please do reach out to me. You can reach me on our website, millerresourcegroup.com. But this is a really important part of both attracting talent to your organization and keeping the folks that you already have. All right, I know that was a lot of information. I promise to keep it brief because I want to make sure that you get some questions in here, and I want to engage with you directly. So Joanna, for the next 10 plus minutes, do we have any questions that I can address?
Not yet, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. Okay, very good. We'll give it a minute or two for people to put in questions. But I think that while I'm waiting for those questions to be formed in your minds, I want to say this point that I touched on regarding the economic performance and the labor market. We are really in a unique position right now. There has not been a significant recession that didn't come with major job market losses. And that's exactly what we're going to be seeing over the next 12 months. We're seeing that despite the fact that both the number of people looking for work and the number of job openings are decreasing, that it's still very much a candidate-driven market and is expected to remain that way for the foreseeable future. So make sure you focus on the folks that are going to make your business great, both through the downturn and in the growth period afterwards. It does look like some questions are coming in. Absolutely. First one is best ways to attract the job seekers who don't use digital media. That's a great point. One of the things that I'm doing in my research is looking at the difference between blue collar and white collar folks. So for typical white collar employees, whether it's sales, engineering, marketing, any of the support functions, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, these kinds of sites are most potent. For blue collar workers, surprisingly, the way that they communicate is really different. So for communication, both in terms of notifying them of job openings and then communicating with them while they're on the job, text messaging is the preferred medium. And in a really surprising finding, what I discovered was to make them aware of job openings
openings, one of the best places to do that is actually Craigslist. That's where the blue collar community goes to for a lot of its information, including job searching. So if you haven't explored Craigslist as a potential vehicle for posting your job openings, highly recommend that you take a look at that as a solution.
Another question we received is any recommended resources, books, guides for hiring virtual assistants?
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Virtual assistants. That's a really interesting one. I don't have anything off the top of my mind, to be honest with you, but reach out to me directly. My email is alexc@millerresource.com, and I'll be happy to do some research and get back to you with a response.
Another question we received is, what is the best assessment tool for reviewing candidates regarding sales roles?
Well, I think, in my personal experience for sales roles, what you really want to be looking for is the network that they're going to be able to bring to the table. Certainly, more experienced and more seasoned people cost more money, but their ability to impact the business right away through existing relationships and their Rolodex is going to be much more meaningful to your top and bottom lines sooner rather than someone that has to build up that network. So I would say when assessing folks for the ability to impact the business right away, it's got to be their connections, relationships with potential customers that you might have, and certainly, the network that they can bring to bear in building relationships with both new and existing clients. That would be my at the top of my list as far as looking at, signs that this is going to be an impact player for me right away.
There's another one. You have data from candidates on the number of interviews they'd like to see, which isn't surprising. Do you have any data on what employers are actually doing?
So what I have seen is that many employers, at least the companies that come to us at Miller Resource Group and ask us to fill their positions, they are looking for ways to streamline that process. They're using technology in segments where they haven't done so before. Again, instead of having a person do 3 or 4 different phone calls with a potential boss or their boss's boss or, the division head, they try to get everyone on a single Zoom call or a Teams call. Typically, what tends to happen in those interviews is that the discussions are actually fairly consistent. They don't change very much from person to person. And so instead of putting a candidate in particular, through the same rigmarole multiple times, try to get all of that information asked right off the bat so that most people have the ability to hear their responses. The other element I would say that really helps with this is training. A lot of times the people that are conducting interviews for potential hires don't have any interview training. And so if you're asking the right questions, you'll be able to get the type of responses and the insight into the candidate that you want to have faster than if you're just kind of going into it willy-nilly without a clear-cut plan. So if you haven't provided interview training and outlined the specific expectations and goals for that interview beyond just get to know this person and get a feel for whether or not they're going to be the right fit in the organization, I highly recommend investing in some high quality interview training to make that process more efficient, because there are the best in class companies that are looking to lower the number of interviews they conduct and therefore increase their chances of actually landing those candidates that are going for 3 or 4 different opportunities simultaneously.
Another question we received is, how important is a company's social media and online footprint? What's the best practice to maximize?
I think it's very important, and in particular for the younger generations. And in a lot of ways, they make a judgment call about that company before they ever have a chance to engage with anyone from the organization. And it's a presence of mind to think about different things. It's how you carry yourself. Obviously, there's a baseline of professionalism, but I find that organizations that can introduce a little bit of their character or personality or their culture into some of their social media posts really stand out. Organizations that talk to the things that particularly young people care about the most, which is things like DEI initiatives and kind of environmental sustainability, things like mental health and representation within the employment community of people that look, talk, and act like them. I think that really makes for a standout experience in terms of really getting someone's mind share as they think about your organization and whether they want to work for you or not. So there are many good examples of companies that excel at this, and of companies that really have no presence or a terrible presence online. So I would definitely advise you to take a look and constantly pay attention at the best in class. LinkedIn, our default source, but certainly take a look at the way that companies behave on that platform above others. I think Twitter, Facebook, and some of the others are less critical in that judgment call, at least from a candidate perspective, in terms of what the company's messaging looks like and kind of what they think about the business based on their social media and on online presence.
Another interesting question is the fact that COVID has sparked, a work from home frenzy, and that a lot of workers now feel entitled to this option, even though it's generally not warranted. Do you have any data on how many candidates or employees are lost due to this option being discontinued or never offered?
Yeah, only kind of conversational. I've heard several companies say that when they implemented a mandatory go back to the office policy, they lost somewhere between 20 and 30% of their employees. But I think that the devil is in the details when you're talking about this. So I'll give you a couple of other perspectives on this. First, understand that pre-pandemic, if you looked at places like Monster or Indeed or LinkedIn, the number of advertised positions that actually offered remote work capability was less than 5%. Today, that number is over 30%. So there really is a much higher propensity for companies to offer those kind of positions. The other side of this is that there does seem to be a little bit of shaking out and dust settling in terms of stratification of the labor market. What I mean by that is that there's the largest component is really positions that need to be done back in person full time. So that includes frontline positions, certainly healthcare, education, retail service, food service, things like that, but also specific industries where they really want people there in person to do the job. That tends to represent about 55, maybe 60% of the total labor force. The next layer is smaller. It's about 30%, and that represents the people that can do some of their work remotely. So that's the WFX trend. It's the part-time in the office, part-time at home environment, whether you're 2 days in, 3 days out, or some sort of other arrangement. So you have to be really sensitive and recognize that even within specific departments, you might have elements of both present. For instance, I delivered a presentation at a conference recently where a major grocery store, the head of their accounting department was saying, I have people that have to be in person in the office full time. These are the folks that actually receive the mail and then have to send out the invoices. I have people that are accountants that do the books. They can do most of their work either part-time remotely or full-time remotely. And then I have IT folks that can operate remotely all the time. And that's the third layer, is folks that really don't need to be in the office to do their job. It's about, I would say, 15% of the total workforce, but you're going to have these layers within almost every department within your company. So it has to be thought of very carefully and intentfully, and you have to treat each position, each individual on a customized basis. You can't really apply broad-based policies to everyone in the organization without getting some sort of pushback and making a certain element of your workforce unhappy. So my recommendation would be, don't try to template it. Really look at the needs and the unique situation within each function of your company, and then put together a policy that makes sense for those positions.
Alex, thank you very much. At this point, we have just about run out of time. We try to keep to our, definitely to our 30-minute format. We'd like to thank you very much for the great information that you've provided today, as well as thank all of you on the call who have participated and asked some really great questions. A recording of this presentation will be available within 2 to 3 business days. The recording link is sent to your participating association, so you should be able to see it on their site. We do have the very last, the 6th installment of this series on Wednesday, December 14th. Alex will focus on developing and committing to a comprehensive and intentional talent strategy at the senior management level. So until then, we'd like to say thank you and have a good rest of your week.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.